There are, however, I am afraid, events over which one can have no control. The following is one of those. These are true tales of my African adventures. May this inspire you, deter you, caution you, and above all, entertain you. Well, here we go, another caution for you. Reasons never to visit a zoo or a snake park. Peter, my partner, arrived at the zoo one morning a little later than he should have. It was his morning to do the early shift. The previous day we had not been able to retrieve chickens from the chicken farm in the morning as usual, as the chicken farmer was experiencing some difficulty or the other. The chickens were only retrieved once the dead had been removed from their batteries late in the afternoon. The zoo animals, as a result, had all eaten late, having skipped an extra 12 hours in which they had grown quite hungry. Peter had left the zoo well after dark. That night the Cape Southeaster blew fiercely across Cape Town. So he had arrived a bit late in the morning. The wind had died down, and a nursery school had planned its outing to the zoo that day. They arrived almost at the same time as Peter. He did not want to make them all wait while he did his usual check in the zoo. What a big mistake. He figured he would let them in and then do his check a little later. I arrived as the school bus was moving off. I saw Peter standing at the cashier's cubicle staring at me. Why is he staring at me like that, I thought. I went up to greet him and he looked like he had seen a ghost. Face white, blood having drained right out of it. When Peter got nervous or embarrassed, he would grin, a silly grin, and giggle in a high-pitched tone. He was wearing a ridiculous grin and giggling at this time. "Okay, what's up?" I said. His story was unearthly. During the night, a large branch had snapped off a tree above Caesar the leopard's enclosure, which tore through the wire netting of the roof. Caesar, who was huge and heavy, had seized the opportunity to climb out and go walkabout. Since he had been fed late in the afternoon instead of early in the morning, and since Peter felt sorry for the animals being fed so late, he had thrown a lot more chickens than necessary into the enclosure. Caesar, it seems, had spent the night climbing in and out of his enclosure, gorging himself on the chickens, and then going out to play. Usually when Caesar had eaten, he would approach any one of us who happened to be passing and lean against the wire ready for a scratch while purring his V8 purr simultaneously. When the children with their teachers came walking past the cage, there he was lying on the lawn in front of the cage. Peter was seated in the cash cubicle when the children and teachers emerged from the zoo. They thanked him, as patrons usually did, expressing their delight at the layout and all the wonderful creatures. The highlight of the whole visit, however, exclaimed the teacher, was that wonderfully tame leopard of yours that was rubbing itself against the children and the teacher's legs and purring so loudly. They all had a chance to pat and stroke it. And the more they patted and stroked, the louder it purred, rubbing himself continuously against them. Peter acknowledged her thanks, and while they were readying themselves to depart, he walked up to Caesar's cage to find out if it was all true. He was out, and he had been walking amongst the nursery school children. He coaxed Caesar back into the cage quite easily through the enclosure door, which he had now opened, and 2 attendants were on the roof in a jiffy, wiring the damage closed. The reason Caesar had not attacked, injured or killed one, many, or even all of these children is obviously his late meal. He was always at his friendliest when his tummy was full. I never did like the way he looked at children visiting the zoo. the way he would stalk them from inside the cage, emitting low growls of disapproval when he couldn't get at them. I always thought that if he had a chance, he would go straight for the nearest child, and that would be the end of that. Hearing Peter relate this story caused me to feel quite sick right to the very core.